Okay, we are in my spare bedroom here, and I want to demonstrate how you would patch a hole in the drywall. You can see I got drywall in here. It's not finished yet. I've still got to do that. This is the only room actually where the drywall is not finished. Well, the bathroom is not 100% finished either, but you know, I've kind of stalled out on the housework here. Mainly because the house is perfectly livable and all the rest of this stuff is just, you know, like fine detail that can be done at any time whatsoever. So I'm going to do this just for the sake of making a video for this channel because that's one of the things that I do. I make videos for the channel. Now, as you can see, there isn't any hole in the wall here. But let's just imagine that, say, for instance, you're carrying in some lumber or other material and happen to smash a hole through the wall with a 2x4. So obviously this is not acceptable. You can't have holes in your drywall like that. So you need to fix that, and I'm going to show you how. Okay, the first thing you got to do is figure out the size of the hole that you're dealing with here. I reach in there and I pull away all of the loose material so I can determine exactly how big the patch needs to be. Because that's what you need to do. You need to cut the patch first, then cut the hole in the wall for the patch to fit into. Okay, so what I've got here is a piece of drywall, a scrap that I have left over. Always a good thing to have around is a scrap of drywall. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut that to size roughly. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to use a measuring tape. Just use your eye here and make sure it's big enough to cover the hole. Score it like that, snap it off, score it on the other side part of the way, and then when you flip it around, you can snap it right off like that. And it's not falling on the floor on you. Now the next thing I want to do with this patch is extend my knife out here a little bit, the blade, and I'm going to taper the edge of the patch on the face side. I'm going to take the knife and cut it like this. And yes, I'm cutting towards me, but no, I'm not going to cut myself apart. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to center it over the hole roughly. Once again, you don't need a tape. I need to just look where the hole is, put the patch pretty much centered over it. Here I've got a marker, although a pencil would probably be better. The marker is good for video because you get to see it better. Let's make a mark all the way around. Then I can take my drywall saw, which I've misplaced, and cut that out on that line. Now once again, that doesn't have to be, you know, perfect, just, you know, rough is good. Now I'm also going to chamfer the edge of this opening as well. And what that does is, number one, it gets rid of those fuzzy things here. And also, it gives a place for the mud to sink in to grip onto the stuff a bit better. Now, to hold the patch in, you want to have something that you can drive screws into. I prefer to use something like plywood, or OSB is probably the best thing because small pieces of OSB don't have any other purpose other than for firewood that, you know, you shouldn't be burning anyway because of all the glue. And they're perfect for this kind of thing. But right here, I have another scrap that really couldn't be used for anything else. And this is particle board, melamine, actually. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that in the hole. Now, in my case, I've got a 2x4 blocking right down here that will kind of support that. And I can also get my hand in there around it to hold it. But if you've got a small hole that you want to do, the best approach is to take a screw and put round about the middle of the piece, like that, and then you can use that as a handle to get the piece in and actually hold it in place until you get the other screws put in. Now, if you're using an impact driver like I'm using here, take your time and make sure you just have that screw just below the surface of the thing without breaking the paper. If you can't manage to do that, I would suggest stopping, just proud of it, and then using a screwdriver. Now, I've got one screw in here already. Now, when I put this other screw over here, what's going to happen is it's going to drill part of the way into the drywall, and it's going to start pushing on that wood. So I've got to hold the wood to make sure that it doesn't push in and tear that screw through on the other side. Okay, I've got 4 screws in there. That's plenty enough. I'll make sure they're below the surface. Take the screw out, and then I can take my patch and put it in. You want to orient that the same way as you marked the hole. And then you don't really need to load this down with screws. I generally just put one right in the middle, because this piece is going to get held in with the tape that goes around in the mud. So you don't really need all these screws. Okay, speaking of mud, I've got some here on my trowel. I'm just going to take some on my 4-inch knife, and I'm going to squish it right into that seam. Okay, I've got a good amount inside the gap. I'm just going to start laying some on the surface here so that I can actually tape it. So I always use paper tape for this kind of repair. I find that it will make a flatter seam actually than the fiber mesh one will. What I do is I'll put that on, centered on the seam, and then what I'm going to do is I'm not overlapping it anywhere. I'm just cutting pieces in and leaving a gap between the pieces. That way, when you do build up the surface, it's not, really thick, and there's no chance that that small spot in there will crack. So I'll take the knife and I'll hold one end of the tape and I'll screed across, pulling out all of the excess mud. You don't want to leave anything in there other than the amount it takes to actually adhere the paper. And the last thing I'm going to do before I leave this to dry overnight or until it's completely dry inside there is I'm going to give it a coat over the top. I'll take some on my trowel here and just go diagonally across and go from the other direction diagonally down. And what I'm doing is I'm just putting a very thin coat over the whole thing, and that gives me a head start on filling it up tomorrow. It is the next day. I let this dry overnight, and it's not 100% dry on the inside there, but it's dry enough that I can give it the next coat. Now, if you're in a particular hurry to get this done, you can use a fast setting compound. I don't like using those because they're a powder form and you have to mix it up and it's a hassle. I don't mind waiting a day for something to happen or for this to dry. I've got lots of other things to do while that's taking place. So what I'm doing now, I've got my knife and I'm just scraping off anything that happens to be sticking out. I'm not sanding it. I'm not going to sand any of this actually. If you're interested in how I can do this without sanding, I've got a whole series of videos and there's a link in the description to those. I'm just going to smooth that off, make sure there's nothing there. Okay, I got a little bit on my trowel. This is not my normal trowel, by the way. This is my notch trowel for tiles, but I can't find my other one, so I'll have to use this. Doesn't matter anyway. It works the same way. Remember, I swabbed it, 45 degrees. I'm going to go straight across with this one. I'm just going to screed it on and screed it off. Now, the objective here for this patch is to finish this basically in 3 coats. I've already got the first coat on there. This is the second coat. And the third coat, which I'm not going to show because it's exactly the same as this. The only difference is, now that this is on and will dry in about 2 hours or so, I'll swab from the top down. So I went 45 both ways. I went side to side on the second coat, And on the third coat, I'll come down from the top. If after that I see any more that needs touch up, it basically can be done with just a small amount on the 4-inch knife to just touch it up. And then I might do some light sanding, but I probably won't have to because this will be plenty smooth enough. Anyway, I hope that was informative. I know there are a lot of videos on the internet or on YouTube showing how to do this. This is just my way. I've done this like, I don't know, dozens and dozens of times, fixing holes all over the place. And it works great. Lots of times I'll skip, if it's a smaller hole, I'll skip the tape altogether and I'll just cut the small patch, fit it in, and then do what I did before, except I won't put tape on, and then 2 coats later it's done, and it never cracks. I've never seen it crack. And you know, if you're gonna sell the house soon, do it with fast set stuff, skip the tape, do it quickly, and then, you know, if it does crack a month or 2 or 3 months down the road, it won't be yours anymore anyway.